How many electrons does it actually take to remember a single 1 or a single 0? For every phone, laptop, and AI server running on Samsung or SK Hynix memory today, the answer is roughly 200,000. 200,000 electrons just to store one bit reliably, without it fading into noise. A team in Shanghai just looked at that number and collapsed it down to one. One electron, one bit. Read at room temperature, on a working chip, published in one of the most rigorously reviewed science journals on Earth. And if this holds up at scale, it doesn't just beat Samsung's number. It attacks the entire physical assumption memory chips have been built on for 40 years. Here's the headline version. On July 16, 2026, a team led by microelectronics professor Zhou Peng at Fudan University in Shanghai published a paper in the journal Science. They'd built a two-dimensional flash memory device, they named it Guiyi, that traps a single electron and reads it back reliably, at room temperature, without expensive cooling equipment, without a lab environment. That last part matters more than people realize. Physicists have chased single-electron storage since the 1990s. Multiple teams built devices that could technically trap one electron. Almost none of them could read that electron back with a signal strong enough to trust, especially not sitting on a bench at normal room temperature. Guiyi didn't just trap the electron. It took a signal that used to flicker at a few tens of millivolts, barely above background noise, and pushed it up to a stable 0.5 volts. That's a tenfold improvement over every previous attempt at single-electron storage. For the first time, one electron, one bit, stopped being a physics demonstration and started looking like an engineering foundation. To understand why this number is such a big deal, you have to understand why today's DRAM chips need 200,000 electrons at all. Because it's not incompetence. It's a 40-year-old trade-off nobody's been able to escape. Every DRAM cell, the memory inside your phone, your laptop, and the servers training AI models right now, stores a bit of data as a tiny electrical charge sitting in a microscopic capacitor. A 1 means the capacitor is holding charge. A 0 means it's empty. The problem is that a capacitor holding just a handful of electrons is fragile. Heat jostles electrons around. Nearby circuits induce tiny stray voltages. Cosmic rays and quantum tunneling can literally knock a stray electron in or out of a cell that's too small. So chip engineers did the only thing that reliably worked. They made the charge reservoir bigger. Instead of trying to distinguish one electron present from one electron absent, a signal you could easily lose in electrical noise, they packed in roughly 200,000 electrons per cell. So even if a few thousand leak away or get knocked loose, the sensing circuit can still confidently tell a 1 from a 0. That's been the unspoken rule of memory engineering for decades. Reliability costs you electrons, and electrons cost you space. Every time chipmakers like Samsung and SK Hynix have shrunk a memory cell to pack more storage onto a chip, they've had to fight harder and harder to keep that giant reservoir of charge stable in a shrinking physical footprint. This is the actual wall behind headlines you've heard about Moore's Law slowing down. It's not that engineers ran out of cleverness, it's that physics started charging brutal rent on every square nanometer. Now picture what the Fudan team actually built. Instead of fighting to keep 200,000 electrons stable in a shrinking space, they built a two-dimensional flash device, a memory cell made from atom-thin layered materials, with a graphene layer acting like a trap door that keeps a single electron from leaking out. Then they solved the part almost nobody else could, reading that one electron back with a strong, stable signal at room temperature. without a supercooled lab environment sitting next to it. If a single trapped electron can produce a robust half-a-volt signal instead of a noise-drowned whisper, you no longer need the 200,000 electron insurance policy. You need one electron and a sensing circuit good enough to trust it. But here's the question that actually matters, and it's the one most headlines are skating past. Does one electron, one bit, in a research paper mean Samsung's memory empire is suddenly in trouble? Or is there a much bigger, much harder gap between a lab demonstration and a factory floor? Let's be precise about what the July 16th paper actually proved, and what it didn't. It proved that single-electron storage can produce a strong, reliable signal at room temperature. That's the genuine scientific breakthrough, and it's why science accepted the paper. It did not prove that this can be manufactured at the scale of billions of cells per chip, with the uniformity and yield that Samsung and SK Hynix have spent decades perfecting for conventional DRAM. And this isn't the Fudan team's first swing at reinventing memory, which is actually useful context. Back in 2025, the same lab, working with researcher Liu Chunsen, unveiled a two-dimensional flash device called PoX, a picosecond speed memory cell that broke records for raw charge storage speed. Later that year, they went further and integrated that 2D flash technology directly with standard silicon CMOS manufacturing, producing a fully functional chip they called the Shanghai architecture, hitting a 94.3% yield rate in early testing. That's the pattern worth noticing. This isn't a single lucky paper. It's the same Shanghai lab systematically knocking down one physical barrier in memory technology after another, each time moving from interesting physics towards something you could actually manufacture. Even so, single-electron storage carries challenges that speed records and yield percentages from earlier 2D flash work don't automatically solve. Trapping and reliably reading one electron per cell means your sensing circuitry has to be almost flawless across every single cell on a chip with billions of them. One bad connection, one contaminated layer, one manufacturing defect, and that cell's single electron is unreadable, with no 200,000 electron buffer to fall back on. Samsung and SK Hynix haven't spent 40 years brute-forcing electron counts because they lacked imagination. They did it because it's the most straightforward way to guarantee a chip actually works when you're manufacturing hundreds of millions of them a year. So here's the honest scoreboard. Samsung and SK Hynix currently ship next-generation HBM4 memory at massive commercial scale, with decades of manufacturing infrastructure behind every chip. Fudan's team has one peer-reviewed device, demonstrated at the individual chip level, with a signal strength breakthrough that genuinely surprised the field. The distance between "we proved this works in the lab" and "this replaces DRAM inside your next phone" is still measured in years of engineering, not months. Zhou Peng's own team, on their earlier 2D flash work, has talked publicly about needing 3 to 5 years just to reach dense industrial-scale integration. But here's why memory engineers at Samsung, SK Hynix, and every AI chip lab on Earth should still be paying very close attention. Because even a partial path towards single-electron storage rewrites the ceiling on what memory density and power efficiency could eventually look like. Because this isn't really a story about one lab experiment. It's a story about the exact bottleneck strangling every AI system you use today. And there's a very specific, very personal reason this matters to the phone sitting in your pocket right now. Here's the layer almost every headline skipped past. This isn't primarily a China versus America chip war story. It's a memory bottleneck story. And the memory bottleneck is arguably the single biggest constraint on the entire AI industry right now. Every large language model, every AI chatbot, every on-device assistant has to constantly move data between processing units and memory while it's generating a response. That movement costs energy, and it costs speed. It's called the memory wall, and it's a huge part of why running powerful AI models locally on a phone instead of shipping your data to a data center has been so difficult. Your phone's battery and chip size simply can't support memory-hungry, fast enough, and power-efficient enough to keep a large model thinking without draining the battery or overheating in your pocket. According to the researchers, the direct real-world benefit of this single-electron approach is that it could let AI language models run on phones using drastically less power, without the AI losing its memory mid-conversation, the way constrained on-device models sometimes do today when they run low on working memory and start dropping context. If a memory cell needs 1 electron instead of 200,000 to reliably hold a bit, the theoretical ceiling on how much memory you can pack into the same power and space budget goes up by an enormous factor. And the amount of energy spent shuffling and refreshing that data goes down. Zoom out further, and there's a bigger structural story here too. For the last several years, headlines about China versus the West in chips have mostly focused on logic chips, the processors that do the computing, where NVIDIA and TSMC currently dominate, and where U.S. export controls have specifically targeted China's access to cutting-edge manufacturing equipment. Memory has quietly been the other half of that battle, and it's one where the physics constraints hit everyone equally, regardless of who has access to the most advanced lithography machines. If a genuinely novel memory architecture, one that doesn't rely on the same manufacturing equipment and scaling tricks that logic chips need, proves out, it represents a path where fundamental materials science research, not just manufacturing scale, could reshape who leads in a critical piece of the AI hardware stack. That's the real stake behind the "Samsung needs 200,000 electrons" headline. It's not really about embarrassing Samsung. It's about whether the physical assumption underneath nearly all modern memory, that reliability requires a big electron reservoir, is actually optional. So if this holds up, where does it actually go from here? Because the roadmap this same Shanghai lab has already laid out is a lot more specific than someday, maybe. Zhou Peng's team has explicitly said their strategy is to treat storage devices as the first type of two-dimensional electronic systems to actually reach industrialization. Specifically because, in his own words, memory chips have comparatively modest demands on material quality and manufacturing precision, paired with performance headroom that already exceeds current commercial technology. That's a very different bet than trying to leapfrog NVIDIA on logic chips overnight. It's a narrower, more achievable target. Prove the physics on memory first, where the bar to beat is lower and the payoff is still massive. That strategy already has a track record inside this exact lab. POX proved 2D flash could hit picosecond scale speed. The Shanghai architecture proved 2D flash could be integrated with standard CMOS manufacturing at a 94.3% yield. Guiyi now proves that a single trapped electron can produce a strong, stable room temperature signal. 3 separate barriers, 3 separate papers, all from the same research group, each one chipping away at a different piece of what commercially viable 2D memory would actually require. The next milestone to watch for is the one that always separates a physics paper from a product: array-level demonstration. A single working cell proves the concept. Thousands or millions of identical cells, manufactured with consistent yield on an actual chip, is what turns a science paper into something Samsung's engineers have to respond to. Based on the team's own public timeline on their earlier 2D flash work, that kind of dense industrial-scale integration is realistically a 3 to 5 year target, not a next quarter announcement. And this fits into a much bigger pattern in Chinese semiconductor research right now, not just from Fudan, but across multiple labs simultaneously. Chinese researchers have also been racing to build ferroelectric-based computing and memory chips, next-generation DRAM-like cells using new fabrication techniques, and quantum memory devices aimed at entirely different bottlenecks in computing. Some of that work is explicitly framed around reducing dependence on Western-controlled manufacturing equipment, since export controls have made it harder for Chinese fabs to access the most advanced lithography tools used for conventional chip scaling. A memory architecture that sidesteps some of those manufacturing constraints by relying more on novel materials science than on cutting-edge lithography is strategically valuable well beyond the specific device in this one paper. So let's put this all together, because both the hype version and the dismissive version of this story are missing the real picture. The dismissive take: it's just a lab paper, Samsung isn't going anywhere, is technically accurate on the numbers. Samsung and SK Hynix have decades of manufacturing infrastructure, proven yields at massive scale, and a memory industry built entirely around them. One peer-reviewed device from one university lab does not erase that. But the hype isn't wrong either, because it's missing what actually changed here. Before July 16, 2026, single-electron memory that worked reliably at room temperature was a physics dream that had eluded researchers for over 3 decades. Now there's a peer-reviewed, published, working device that does it, with a signal 10 times stronger than anything that came before it. That doesn't instantly replace DRAM, but it does something arguably more important. It proves the theoretical floor of memory storage, 1 electron, 1 bit, is no longer just theoretical. And the deeper significance is this: memory chip design has operated under the same core assumption since the 1970s, that reliability requires throwing more electrons at the problem. If that assumption is genuinely optional, then every future conversation about AI hardware efficiency, on-device AI, and the physical limits of chip scaling has to account for a second path that didn't exist a week ago. Let's bring this together. On July 16, 2026, a team at Fudan University in Shanghai, led by Professor Zhou Peng, published a working 2-dimensional flash memory device called Guiyi, a chip that traps and reliably reads a single electron at room temperature, delivering a signal 10 times stronger than any previous attempt at single-electron storage. Today's most advanced Samsung and SK Hynix memory chips need roughly 200,000 electrons to store 1 reliable bit. This device needs one. The gap to mass production is real. Dense, industrial-scale integration with commercial yield is still likely a 3 to 5 year engineering climb, not an overnight replacement for DRAM. But the physics wall that shaped memory chip design for 50 years just showed its first real crack, from the same Shanghai lab that's already delivered 2 other 2D memory breakthroughs in the past year alone. Let's run through the numbers one more time because they tell the real story. 200,000 electrons, what it takes today to reliably store 1 bit in Samsung and SK Hynix's most advanced memory. 1 electron, what Guiyi needs to do the same job. A 10-fold improvement in signal strength over every prior single-electron attempt. Room temperature, not a supercooled lab. 3 separate breakthroughs from one research group in under 18 months. Individually, these are just facts about one chip. Together, they describe the moment the oldest assumption in memory engineering stopped being untouchable. We're going to keep tracking this story as Fudan's team moves toward array-level demonstrations, and as Samsung and SK Hynix respond to a genuinely new kind of competition. One that isn't about manufacturing scale, but about rewriting the physics underneath the entire industry. If this video helped you actually understand what changed on July 16th, not the exaggerated version, not the dismissive version, but the real engineering and the real stakes, hit subscribe, because this story is just getting started. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.